Hello, friends. It's the Carnivore Rabbi here, as always, to meet, pray, and love. Do carnivores need to wear sunscreen? This is a monumental question in the carnivore community. Why is this such a big question? I think the first thing is carnivore leads us to question all the conventional advice of the so-called health authorities. We know that the food pyramid, the famous food pyramid that says you should have 6 to 11 servings of grains a day, it should actually be reversed. That what's on top should be on the bottom. You should have a lot more meat and very little carbs. We know that's the case. And this change in our food intake leads us to question a lot more of what the health authorities say. We get a more suspicious, non-conforming mindset. Maybe some of us already had it, but if you become a carnivore and you see its benefits, you start to question a lot of the conventional health advice. So one of the big conventional health advices, something over and over again, commercials, ads, from your doctor, from everybody, is put on a lot of sunscreen, put on more sunscreen. So our carnivore experience leads us to question this advice. Second reason is that when you become a carnivore, you feel closer to nature. You feel more grounded. You feel more connected to the natural world. In some ways, you're moving closer to what our ancestors, the hunter-gatherers, experienced. And so we start to ask ourselves, should we be doing all these things, putting on sunscreen, using certain kinds of soaps, using certain kinds of shampoos, using certain kinds of toothpaste? We start asking these questions. Should we continue doing this? Because we know that we got here through the practices of our ancestors. And they didn't do a lot of the things that we do today. And we know a lot of the current conventional practices are driven by marketing, pharmaceuticals, cosmetics. They're all driven to get us to buy more. And certainly they don't help us, and they may actually hurt us. So then we say, is sunscreen one of those things? Is sunscreen one of those products? We know our ancestors didn't wear sunscreen. It didn't exist. It's a purely chemical concoction. So if our ancestors were out in the sun and they didn't wear sunscreen, and then we are here today and we're outside and we're constantly told to wear sunscreen, maybe our ancestors knew something that modern health authorities don't know, or that modern health authorities would prefer to forget. So let's look at this question. But before doing that, if you haven't already, hit and subscribe. It really helps, and it leads me to have access. The more subscribers I have, the more access I can get to some truly wonderful carnivore influencers, and I can ask them the questions that no others are asking. And that's what carnivore does for our mental and our spiritual clarity. These are the kinds of questions I want to examine with people who really know what happens in our body with the carnivore diet, and your support, your subscribing gives me that ability to do so. So, I'll confess, right off the bat, I use sunscreen. Not a lot, but I was traveling with my wife. We were in Costa Rica she was doing a bat mitzvah, and it was very hot, and I put on sunscreen. I'm not wearing any right now, even though it's sunny in Chicago. But when I am outside in a very hot environment for an extended period of time, I use it. And some carnivores would think that's heresy, right? Because we shouldn't have any extraneous chemicals on our body. In fact, Kerry Mann, who I respect deeply, calls his podcast, Carnivores Don't Get Sunburned. Why do I do it? First of all, there's some human element to it. My wife pushes me to do that. She puts up with carnivore. In fact, she celebrates carnivore. She's eating a lot more meat herself. But on issues of sunscreen, she is passionate. In every decision in life, especially when you live with other people, you have to weigh the costs and the benefits. And to me, the cost of wearing sunscreen does not seem that high. Yes, these are extra chemicals, but I have noticed no ill effects from it. Whereas I do notice ill effects from eating any carbs, and I've noticed them my whole life, I notice no ill effects from wearing sunscreen. Secondly, the truth is, I do get burned. I have gotten burned since I've been a total carnivore. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that when I have gotten burned, the burns haven't hurt. We were traveling during winter break last year and the year before, both times when I was very strict carnivore. And I went out for a run with my shirt off and was on the beach with the shirt off. And I got burned because I wasn't wearing sunscreen at that time. And it was tremendously annoying, but it did not hurt. What used to be, if I got sunburned, I would go in the shower and take a shower and it would really hurt. I'd have to put some aloe vera on it and so forth. Since going carnivore and getting sunburn, it hasn't hurt. Why is that? Truth is, I don't know. I don't know the science. In fact, I don't think anyone really knows the science because these are such long-term questions. And there is science indicating that people who have worn sunscreen do get less skin disease. There are skin illnesses later in life, skin cancer. So again, these studies, I don't trust these studies. They're epidemiological. There's so many other factors, but there are interesting studies on the benefits of sunscreen. And so I don't know whether sunscreen is really harmful. Anyone, and I'm sure I'm going to get some comments, people who totally disagree with me, think it's horrible, anything artificial is awful, same kind of logic as using fluoride and so forth. I know there's going to be some haters. But to me, the potential benefits outweigh the risks. Do I slather it on in huge quantities? No. Do I put it moderately so I don't get burned? Yes. I'm curious as to what you think. And please, the haters out there, I'm not saying that I know the absolute truth on this. I'm not saying sunscreen isn't bad. There could be risks we don't know about. There could be things that manifest themselves later. But at this point, I'd rather A, keep my family happy, and B, potentially protect myself against something that doesn't cause any harmful effects. That all being said, my general philosophy still remains do everything to be closer to nature. That's the beautiful thing about carnivore. It reorients our mindset. It reorients us towards asking questions. What did our ancestors do? What did people who lived in nature and didn't have access to 7-Eleven 24/7, where they could get any artificial processed foods, all chemically enhanced, how did they live? And why do we ask that question? We ask that question because we're here because of them. They survived. They got through millions of years of ice age, of competition. They evolved to survive so that we could be here today. So we're shaped. Again, this is for those of you who question evolution, that's fine. I'm not here to argue about it. I'm a person of deep faith, and all faith traditions have accepted evolution. I'm not here to argue about that, but I do believe for 99% of our existence, maybe 98%, we were hunter-gatherers. And so we can learn from the habits that they embraced. And sunscreen may be an exception. They certainly didn't use sunscreen. But other things they did, having time where you're walking barefoot, experiencing nature, eating animal foods, animal products, rejecting plants. Plants are trying to kill you, as Dr. Chafee says. Doing things that bring us closer to nature is not only healthy, but it's healing. It's healing. It takes us out of all the artificial illness that the artificial world has driven us to. And think about that question. Keep questioning. Keep questioning what health authorities say. Derive truth from your own experience. And that's really where I'm coming from with sunscreen. I have found that it is helpful, and I have found that it is not harmful. And I think we can trust ourselves in this journey. That really is ultimately what carnivore teaches us. Trust your own experience. If you're feeling better on this way of eating, which I think almost 100% of people who try carnivore do, then you know it's right for you.